I love Magic, I love Civ 6, these are my Civ 6 themed Magic fan cards. I am Loki the Gamer, and this is the Egypt set. The Egypt set was the second I ever designed. Now, I don't think it shows because I've made many revisions since, and sure enough, the Egypt cards received many of those revisions to be what they are today. The card list for Egypt is always 6, like always. It is 1 legendary land, 3 leaders, and 2 unique builds. So yeah, that's it. No room for any powers of agendas or anything like that. So yeah, so when there are 3 leaders, my hands are tied. No room to mess around. Overview of Egypt. What will we run into? Well, a variety of different things. First, there'll be wonders. And let's take a look at our equivalency chart. Wonders equal artifacts. And also, interestingly, there'll be buildings. Now, buildings are rarely referred to in Civ 6 abilities, but I still made a line for them in the chart, and if wonders are legendary artifacts, seems to me like buildings, regular old buildings built in cities, are regular artifacts. Makes sense to me. So there is that. There will be question of gold. Gold equals treasures. Food equals, in this case, equals creature tokens. So food equals city growth, population growth, and therefore extra creature tokens. We'll talk about culture. Now, culture, according to my chart, can mean a variety of different things. In this case, it'll mean life gain. And also a little bit of mill. And finally, something unique that does not figure on this chart, the concept of flooding. So I had to be creative. It's the only Civ that has anything that it has any powers that talk about flooding. Flooding is one of the many natural disasters that can occur in Civ 6, and I thought to myself, in Magic, what is flooding? Well, I thought about the original Flood card. It is a tap card, a card that taps creatures. And several other cards, maybe not that one, obviously, but other tap cards do more than merely tap. They also stun creatures. They put stun counters on them, so basically they get tapped and they stay tapped for as long as they have stun counters. They get to remove one each untap phase, but they will not untap until all the stun counters are gone. So I translated the concept of Civ 6 flooding to stun counters in Magic. The color identity of Egypt has to be Esper. It has to have white because all these pharaohs are, God on earth, and they are the head of a very structured civilization, so that's white. It has to have black because those pharaohs are also dicks and very selfish people who don't shy away from doing horrible things to their slaves. And it has to have blue because, the Nile. So there we go, black, white, and blue. Now let's take a look at the Egypt power. In Civ 6, it is called Iteru, extra production towards districts. Now that I chose to ignore. But also, production bonus towards wonders. Now that I focus entirely on. But only if placed next to a river. So you'll see soon enough that I did include that restriction that rivers must be involved. And also, Egypt does not receive damage from floods. There's the flooding aspect. So let's take a look at the legendary land of Egypt. Since there were a couple of very different effects in what we just read, I decided to make it a modal dual-faced card. One side is called just plain Egypt, and the other one is called Ptolemaic Egypt. And sure enough, the artwork that I use for that side is indeed the background that you see to the left, well, to her right, to the left of the Ptolemaic persona of Cleopatra. So that's where I got that name from. And that picture to match. Now the front side, Egypt, it taps for a colorless, so that's mighty unuseful. But let's read on. There's the Iteru power, tap to add a white and a blue. Oh, there we go, there's your color. However, use this mana only to cast legendary artifact spells. So there's your wonders. So there's your production bonus towards wonders. So the only time that you'll get color from this land is when you want to play a legendary artifact, which ironically will very often cost no color. But there you go. I'm sure that when I get around to making all of the world wonders as cards, I'll sneak in a lot of colored mana pips in some other casting cost. My nod to the fact that in order to get your production bonus, the wonder must be built next to a river. My nod to that is the final line: activate only if you control an island. So there you go. There's your condition. Shouldn't be too hard to meet that condition, but it is there. What it does mean is that you can't use this Egypt card to cast a 2-mana legendary artifact on turn 1. You can't just drop Egypt, tap it for 2, cast a legendary artifact, because you have no islands, so you wouldn't be able to use that ability. You would have to wait the next turn, drop an island, and then you have 3 mana that you can use towards a legendary artifact. So it's very neat, but it does have its limits. Now the other side, the Ptolemaic Egypt, there's my nod to the flooding protection. It taps for blue. So yeah, because this side of the land is all about blue, is all about river, not only because of its power, but even in the artwork. So it taps for blue, and I made this just like a few other dual face card that I made. I made it so that one side could return the card back to your hand in case you wanted to drop it back again, this time on the other side. So I made it a self-bounceable card like a few others that I've made, and also like a few others that I made it so that only one side has that built-in ability to bounce itself back to your hand, not the other. So there you go. So for 1 blue, you could return that land to your hand. And the real ability of Ptolemaic Egypt, the one that deals with flooding, that protects you from flooding, you get to tap it, remove a stun counter from up to 2 permanents you control. So there you go. If someone has stunned you, you could remove some of those stun counters. Now it says a stun counter from up to 2 different permanents. You can't remove 2 counters from the same permanent, which is a shame. It would have been better, it would have been more versatile if you had the choice to remove 2 stun counters, whether they're from different permanents or the same. But yeah, I chose that, and I stick to it. Now, of course, this is not merely a protective thing. It's not just to defend yourself against those nasty stun counters that blue players stick on you. You could also turn that to your advantage. I'm thinking especially of the Watcher in the Water from Lord of the Rings, the one who comes with a bunch of stun counters. So it takes quite a while for the Watcher in the Water to come online, to have all of his stun counters removed, so you can use it for the scary, menacing threat that it is. But if you have this card, you can help the Watcher in the Water. If whatever effects you have has put stun counters on your own permanents, then this can help you get rid of them. So it's could be part of some neat low-level combos, and if anything else, just use the other side and use it to cast cheap artifacts. Cheap wonders, I should say. So that's it for the land of Egypt. Now let's take a look at one of our 3 leaders. So first we have two personas of Cleopatra. And the original is the Queen of the Nile. Her ability is called Mediterranean's Bride. So she is all about trade routes. So she loves playing peacefully, making friends, sending trade routes to her friends, receiving trade routes from her friends. Basically, she receives a bunch of extra gold for her trade routes. There's extra food involved as well, and her trade partners also get bonuses. So everyone's happy. A bit of a group hug kind of thing, and sure enough, that's kind of what I did. Let's take a look at the card. So she is blue, and then a hybrid of white or black, so she only costs 2. and yet her identity is 3 colors. And she is a 2/2, human, noble, rare, and there's her ability, Mediterranean's Bride. Whenever an opponent creates a treasure during your turn, you may pay 1. If you do, create 3 treasure tokens, and that opponent creates a white 1/1 citizen creature token. There you go. So there's the tit for tat. There's the trading aspect. So your opponent simply has to create treasures during your turn, and of course, if they tend not to do that, then go ahead and help them out. Create treasures for them, give them treasures. You'll see in the cards to come, I've got a little bit of a synergetic engine towards that, and we're not done actually. Cleopatra herself has a way of doing that. And yeah, so there you go. As long as you ensure that your opponents create treasures during your turn, you can pay 1 and get 3 of your own. So yeah, so you are down 1 mana, but you got 3 treasures back. So you essentially make a profit of 2. And plus, you don't even have to use those treasures right away. You could pile them up until you cast some monstrous thing. And to make this bit of a fair trade, your opponent gets a little 1/1 creature. Now, of course, all the treasures involved, they represent gold. They represent the gold bonuses that you get in these Civ 6 trade routes. But don't forget, I also mentioned that extra food is involved in those bonuses, and that's where the little 1/1 citizen token comes into play. That represents the food bonus. So your opponent receives that food bonus, therefore they receive the little citizen. And now the final ability is what makes this Cleopatra self-synergetic. You can tap a non-token untapped artifact you control, and you make a player create a treasure token. Now, it could be yourself, but it's much better to make your opponent create the treasure and get that whole trade deal going on. And there's a very important word. The most important word in that power is, of course, non-token. Tap a non-token untapped artifact you control. If I didn't have that, then you could create a treasure, create it for yourself, and then use that treasure, tap it, to trigger the ability and create another treasure for yourself. So basically, that ability by itself is a infinite loop of treasure tokens. Disgusting, broken. Obviously, it was not meant to do that, so therefore the word non-token is rather important. And that makes a nice self-sustained card that could easily be the commander of a deck. Now, there's something interesting. Before we move on, there's something that you can see here and that we'll see on the other leaders is the reliance on artifacts. Now, the power that we read, Cleopatra's power that we read on the Civ 6 screen, said nothing about artifacts. So Egypt as a nation, yes, does care about artifacts. That's why the legendary land had a very artifact-based ability. But the leaders don't technically care about artifacts. But it was important to me to sneak in an incentive to incentivize a potential Cleopatra player to make their deck artifact-centric, to at least have a few. That's why her last ability, which is rather important, that's how she synergizes, that's how she can trigger her own very powerful ability. Well, that secondary ability is triggered by tapping artifacts. So there we go. There's nothing in the Mediterranean's Bride ability that necessitated that I relied on artifacts, but it felt nice to me that the entire Egypt little mini set revolved around artifact to keep the thematic aspect of artifacts in place. And you'll see the same thing in the other Cleopatra card. Here's her Ptolemaic persona. Her ability is called Arrival of Happy. Resources along floodplains receive extra food and extra culture. and owned floodplains grant extra appeal. And as you can see, once again, there's no mention of artifact. And yet, in a second, we'll see her card, I did sneak in a reliance on artifact to keep the synergy alive. But before we move on to the card, a few words. First of all, it involves floodplains. Now, you'll see what I did with floodplains in a second. Basically, think about it. Floodplains, it's a plains, and it's flooded. So you'll see it's a bit of a merge of plains and islands. And there's also a mention of appeal. Now, appeal is something that excites me very much. I created an entire Magic the Gathering concept to represent appeal. So a new keyword coined by myself to represent the Civ 6 concept of appeal. However, just because Cleopatra here gets a bonus to her appeal, she doesn't really seem to care. She doesn't do anything about it. So I didn't include the concept of appeal in this set on her card. I did include it in other sets like Australia. Now, Australia, they really care about appeal. So if you want to see what my appeal concept is like, go check out that video. You'll see what it is and how Australia uses it. But no, don't expect to see it here on this Cleopatra card. Let's take a look at the Ptolemaic Cleopatra Queen. She costs a whole lot more. She costs one of each, a black, blue, white, and 2 generic. She is a rare human noble for 3/3. And her ability, the Arrival of Happy, reads, artifact spells you cast have affinity for lands that are islands and or plains. So, a couple of things about that. Once again, you see that I've included the reliance on artifact. As mentioned before. Where am I going with that? You'll see. And the affinity, I worded it in a very special way. I said affinity for lands that are islands and or plains. I could have said affinity for islands and plains. But that would have meant that lands that are both islands and plains would have counted towards 2 for that affinity. And that struck me as a little too powerful. So if you have one of those island, plains, land, that single land would count for 1 towards affinity. I know very well how affinity must be used very delicately. It could be very powerful. This is a huge boost towards your artifact casting, so you could use this very dangerously, especially if I allow for these lands to count for 2. And now, why are these floodplains granting you ramping towards artifact? It's supposed to give you food, isn't it? That's what the Civ 6 power said. Floodplains equals food. Instead, here I said floodplains equals artifacts. Well, let's read on. Whenever you cast an artifact spell with mana value greater than the amount of mana spent to cast the spell, create a number of white 1/1 citizen creature tokens equal to the difference. So there you go. In a nutshell, whenever you cast an artifact with a discount, so essentially when your affinity kicked in, or any other discount, but most likely it'll be because of your affinity. So when you cast an artifact spell and you spend less mana on it than you should have, then you get a whole bunch of little citizen tokens, a number of tokens equal to the difference. So if it's a 5 mana value artifact and you cast it for 2, you get 3 little citizens, and there's your food bonus. So see, I took a long roundabout way. So floodplains, in other words, islands and plains, floodplains give you a discount towards artifacts, and when you do use that discount towards artifacts, you get citizen creature tokens, which represent your food bonus. So there you go, floodplains equals food bonus, but only when you go through the medium of artifact casting. So I did what the power said to do. I just added a little reliance on artifacts because I wanted all of these cards to synergize very well with Egypt as a concept. Let's take a look at Ramesses II, who has definitely a built-in artifact reliance, so I didn't have to artificially crowbar my way through this artifact reliance. He actually does care about wonders, which of course mean legendary artifacts. So his ability, Abu Simbel gives him a bonus culture when he constructs a building, and even more bonus culture when he completes a wonder. So there's his reliance on wonders, but also straight up buildings. Now, according to the chart that we looked at the beginning, buildings equal plain and simple artifacts, and wonders equal legendary artifacts. So let's look at the card. He is a 4-drop black white +2 generic rare human noble with 4/2 stats, and his Abu Simbel ability reads: whenever an artifact enters under your control, you gain life equal to its mana value. So new artifact equals new building, and gain life equals culture boost. And then, of course, it's not done. If that artifact is legendary, so therefore if that artifact is a wonder, you may pay 1 blue. If you do, target opponent mills X cards, where X is the artifact's mana value. So you get a culture boost in the form of life gain if it's a building, and you get another culture boost in the form of milling if that artifact is legendary. And of course, if the artifact is legendary, you also get the life gain. And interestingly, I made the mill effect come at a cost of 1 blue. That 1 blue makes all the difference in the world, because I really wanted Ramesses II to be black and white, to represent how godly he is, Pharaoh, for the ages, eternal Pharaoh. He's a living god, so he's all white. And he also has no compunction about making his slaves kill themselves over the buildings that they create for him. So that's a pretty black, nasty thing to do. So it felt to me that he should be black and white, no blue. But if he didn't have any blue in his mana cost, then he wouldn't be able to use the Egypt land. So if you build Ramesses II as a commander, feels like he deserves to have Egypt in his 99. So I really wanted him to have blue in his identity. Since I didn't want blue to be in his mana cost, well, I put blue in his identity via his ability. So there you go. Because there's a little blue pip in his text, he is indeed black, white, and blue, just like both Cleopatra's. And he can therefore use the Egypt land. And there you go. So a very simple double culture boost, and I made both culture boosts different. One is life gain and the other one is milling. So is that enough to make him into an efficient milling deck? I don't know. Maybe if you can cast a lot of legendary spells and then bounce them, because it says these artifacts must simply enter. You don't have to cast them. So if you can bounce them, somehow flicker them, then that will work. You will trigger his ability again and again and again. So you'll gain a lot of life and you'll mill your opponent to death. It's possible. I don't think it's very effective. It's not very efficient, but it's a way of building him. More likely, you might want to play him in the 99 of either Cleopatra instead. Why milling, though? Why is milling associated with culture? It's on the equivalency chart. All of these other abilities are pacifying abilities. Your opponent is agog and enamored with your culture, too much to attack you, so it makes sense that something that taps or prevents damage would be associated with culture. But why milling? Well, milling in Magic terms has always been associated with insanity. When your library runs out, you are driven mad, you lose the game. So in Civilization terms, you are driven mad by how magnificent and resplendent your opponent's culture is. You lose the game, they win a cultural victory. That's the logic behind it. Losing your mind because your opponent's culture is just that awesome. We'll talk about that again in another video, because I did create one civ that focuses on attacking with its culture through milling. Let's move on to the two unique builds of Egypt. The unit is called the Marianu Chariot Archer. Now that is a simple chariot unit upgraded from the basic one because it has extra movement. So therefore I gave it Flash. Since it is an archer, I also gave it Reach. So the card is a 4-drop, 1 white, 3 generic, common, human archer, 3/2. And there was nothing about it that that had anything to do with treasures and gold, nothing like that, but I really wanted this card to synergize with Cleopatra, with the original Queen of the Nile. So therefore I used the fun Bloomborough mechanic of gift. Gift a treasure. So when you cast this spell, you may promise an opponent a treasure. So when this creature enters, they will get a treasure. And because, of course, you just did that during your turn, that treasure that entered under your opponent's control will trigger a Cleopatra. So that's yet another way of triggering a Cleopatra. So that guy would definitely go in a Cleopatra deck. As mentioned, because he's an archer, he's got reach, because he's got extra movement, he's got flash, and of course, any card that has gift, there has to be a consequence to the gift. When you do gift the gift, it's not all about, hey, I'm gonna trigger a Cleopatra. The card by itself has to care about the gift. So since it's an archer, I decided to give that unit a little bit of a ping, a little bit of a bite. So when Marianu Chariot Archer enters, if a gift was promised, it deals 1 damage to target creature. Now that is a very red thing to do. But white has always been pretty good at creature removal as well. It's a little bit outside the pie chart to do so through direct damage like that, but you know, removal is removal, so I felt that an archer, no matter its color, should totally have a little ping effect for 1 damage. It's not even like it's a Prodigal Sorcerer tap for ping, no, it's a one-time ping, so felt it was of minimum impact enough to warrant as a card. And there you go for the Marianu Chariot Archer, which leaves only the Sphinx. I had a lot of fun with that. Well, first of all, it's a legendary artifact, so that's kind of like a world wonder. Now, I know very well that we, the modern people, we regard the Sphinx of Egypt as the Sphinx of Egypt. You know, the main one, you know, the one with the busted nose right next to the pyramids, essentially the one that's in the picture right now. But obviously, there was not only ever one Sphinx. The concept of that lion dude with a pharaoh's head was a very common sculpture in ancient Egypt, so it shouldn't be really legendary. In fact, when you play Egypt in Civ 6, you're likely to just dot the land with a whole bunch of sphinxes. So yeah, there isn't just one, but I decided to make it legendary anyway, to out of respect for the one that we recognize as the Sphinx. Now, that artifact is a simple mana rock, and what it does in Civ 6 is it grants you faith, and if it is next to a wonder, it grants you extra faith. And it also grants you extra goodies if it is built on a floodplains. So let's take a look at what I did. Its reliance on wonders and its reliance on floodplains. So it taps for a colorless. So first of all, it's a common that costs 2. It taps for a colorless, it taps for a white, but you may only activate this if you control another legendary artifact. So you do get your faith bonus, but only if you have essentially another wonder, just like the Sphinx grants you a bonus only if it is next to a wonder. And then you will tap it also for blue, but it too has a condition. Activate only if a card named Floodplains is in your graveyard. Yes, you read that right. I did something that very, very few Magic cards have ever done. After all, this isn't Yu-Gi-Oh! Very rarely have Magic cards referred to other Magic cards by name. It's just not something that Magic does. But it's also not entirely unheard of. And I decided to do that. Why? Because there happens to be a card named Floodplains, of course. How perfect is that? So Floodplains is not a land type or a land subtype, nothing like that. But since there is a card called Floodplains, I decided to use it. Now, why would it be in your graveyard? Well, if you're familiar with the floodplain cards, you'll know that it is an old fetch land. So yes, fetch land, sacrifice it to go fetch a land from your deck, but this is part of the old batch. It comes in tapped. That's why you might never have heard of it. It's not a very popular card. It's not a very good card. Sure, it allows you to get lands out of your deck, to streamline your deck. That's one of the points of land fetching. But it does so slowly by entering tapped that, essentially no one really plays with those old tap fetch lands. But this incentivizes you to play with the floodplains. You have it in your deck, you draw it, you play it, you crack it, and you use it to fetch a land, and it ends up in your graveyard. And now your Sphinx can tap for blue. But I did even more than that. The artifact also reads, you may play cards named floodplains from your graveyard. Now granted, I know that if this is a commander deck, you only have one floodplains. But if you do have it, then you can crack it and then bring it right back if you haven't played a land yet. It enters tapped. Next turn, you crack it again, you bring it right back, and next turn you crack it again, you bring it right back. So yes, you guarantee yourself a land drop every single turn. That's not bad at all. It's also not the end of the world. It doesn't allow you to drop several lands in a turn. No, it does not give you extra land drops. It just allows you to keep playing your floodplains from your graveyard, guaranteeing a land drop. And you are really streamlining your deck. You are grabbing land out of your deck at the rate of 1 land per turn. So that's neat, but it's also a long shot because you really have to, you either have to go fetch your floodplains, which is not easy, or you have to be lucky enough to draw it. So there you go. If this card came to be, if the Sphinx ever existed exactly the way I worded it, then you could expect the floodplains card to go through a little bit of a price spike. Instead of being worth, I don't know, 17 cents, it would be worth more, but, you know, obviously not hundreds of dollars. Just because you can do that cute little gimmick doesn't mean that people would just go mad and start buying it by the shovelful. But it's a cute idea. And I do like the concept of magic cards referring to other cards by name, even though, as I've said, it's not typical, it shouldn't be typical, but it's awfully cute and quirky when it does happen, and I don't hate it. And there we go, there is my Egypt set. What do you think? 3 potential commanders, which one would you most likely want to use? Which one would you stick in the 99 of your commander of choice? Would you use all 3? And do you agree with the fact that I made all 3 commanders reliant on artifact? Basically, I incentivized you to build your deck around artifact, legendary artifact specifically. Do you think that makes sense, or was that artificially wrenched into the gears of these Cleopatras? So do let me know, and I'll talk to you later for another set of 6 cards representing one of the many civs in Civ 6.